In this video, we'll take a look at VCAs, pop groups, and in general, configuring your input channels and setting them up for the first time. One of the first things I did is I thought about my input channels, how I want to organize them, and which ones I needed, and which order I'd like to see them in. What I did is I went into Excel and I made a list of all my inputs. I have 8 microphones for the choir, 7 microphones for the drums, 3 microphones for the piano. Basically these static inputs that I'm always going to have to see. And I laid them out on 48 inputs. And I thought about what would be convenient to see closer to me and what would be convenient to see a little bit further. So I'm going to go ahead and label some channels. These are just going to be dummy channels so we have some understanding of how we can group these with VCAs and pop groups. So I'll start here with input number 9. We'll go kick, snare, tom 1, tom 2, tom 3, overhead left, overhead right. And then say I've got 4 microphones for a choir I might have, so I'll label them tenor, bass, soprano, and alto. And then let's say I have a stereo mic on a piano. So piano left, piano right. And then say I have a small band, I just have a bass guitar, an acoustic guitar, say I have a shaker, and then I've got some vocal mics. I've got, say, I'm using color coding for microphones because they're used by all kinds of people. So I've got wireless red, wireless blue, wireless black. Now if I go over to my input here, what I'm seeing is a small window of all of my inputs. And if I use these buttons, I can scroll through this little window. This window will go along my inputs. So right now I'm looking at inputs 1 through 4, 5 through 8, and 9 through 12. That's what these 3 lights indicate. And if I press this, I will lose these first 3, and these will move down, and I'll see the next 4 inputs appear here. So I'll do that once, and I see the names showing up. So I have kick, snare, tom, overhead, and now I'm seeing my choir microphones, and here I'm seeing my band microphones, and I'm seeing some wireless microphones that I've labeled. Now, if this was a live situation, I really wouldn't want to be scrolling through these back and forth all the time. And that's what VCA groups are for. If I hold down this VCA button, I see all of my channels. As I'm holding down, I can scroll through, and I'm going to select what I want in this VCA. Say this first VCA, I'm going to use it for vocals. So I'm going to select these 3 wireless microphones and let go. And now when I have this VCA selected, all I see is those 3 wireless microphones. I'll hold down the second VCA and I'll put my small little band, I'll put all of them in there. So bass, acoustic guitar, and shaker. In the third VCA I'll put my choir microphones, tenor, bass, soprano, and alto. In the fourth VCA I will place my drum kit. So now I've got 4 VCAs, they're not labeled yet, so I'm going to go back in and press VCA on my screen access. In the first VCA I had vocals, so I'll say vocals. Second VCA I had instruments, so I'll just say instruments. Third VCA I had choir. And the fourth I had drums. A time-saving tip at this point is if you color your VCA, say drums, I'll color those orange. The contributing channels currently are green, but my VCA is orange. What I can do is I can press this little paint bucket and it will apply that color to the to what is a member of that VCA. So now all of my drums are orange. And I'll do that for the other 3 VCAs. I'll label my choir purple and apply it to the members. I'll label my instruments with red and apply it to the members. And I'll label my inputs white and apply it to the contributions. So now when I look at all of my channels, they're already all colored, and it helps obviously with color coding. Maybe some of these wireless microphones that are red, blue, and black, I might want to label the red one with a red background and blue with a blue background. So that's a VCA. And what a VCA really does for you is it allows you to, for example, my choir, I'll set up a balance between the 4 parts of the choir, and if I need more choir, I can just use the VCA to raise the volume or lower the volume, keeping the same balance between those microphones. So what it really does is it allows you to mix with just these 10 faders here. Now let's look at pop groups. They're a lot like VCAs in terms of how they group things together for you and bring the inputs to you, but then they're not like VCAs because they really have no audio function. All they do is bring things to you. So let's take Pop 1 for example, and my piano, for example, my choir always sings with the piano. So I'm going to select the 2 piano microphones and my choir microphones, even though the level between those might be different and probably should be different, and I'll put those together into one pop group. So that when the choir decides to sing, I can see my most needed and most important inputs at once. So I have my 4 choir microphones there and my 2 piano microphones there. Inputs can be members of a VCA and a pop group. Inputs can be members of multiple pop groups. But there are your options for bringing the channels to you and not really scrolling through them all the time. You press what you're doing or what you're working on, and you go from there. Once your channels are visible here on the left side, you can use these quick access controls to control an equalizer, control a compressor. It's all at your fingertips at that point. Another option you have with VCAs is sending those VCAs to the right side of the board or area B. There's a button right here that says area B, and I've been growing fond of this button and the functionality that it provides for me. So I'm going to go ahead and enable area B, and what that does is it separates it from that side of the console. In regular mode, when you're scrolling through the channels, this scrolls along as if it was right here. But when you select area B, it kind of operates on its own and allows you to scroll separately from that area, allowing for 2-man operation if you desire. But what I've found useful for is if I have an effects return or maybe some media like a CD player or a computer input or an auxiliary input, I might want to have these on the right side all the time. So if I choose one of these VCAs, for example, I had an auxiliary input that I set up earlier, and I placed those into VCA 5. I'll go back in and I'll label that VCA. I'll label it media, and I'll color it blue. If I go to that little icon, I can control the details of that VCA. And by the way, this is where you can make an auxiliary return part of a VCA, and I believe this is the only place to do that. So if you have an effects return, you can actually assign that to a VCA and have that show up along with your inputs. So this is my media VCA. My 2 members are aux left and right input. And down towards the bottom here, the media VCA has a button that says area B. If I do that, if I press that button, media will now unfold to area B on the right side of the console. There's preferences that allow you to overlay a stereo pair. So my auxiliary left and right are a stereo pair, and what it's done is it's overlaid those onto one fader, which allows me to have 4 stereo pairs over here on the right side, which is exactly what I have. I have a dual CD player, a computer input, and an auxiliary input. And it really makes it convenient to have those at my fingertips all the time when I need it. Also, it's convenient for effects. I have 3 effects units, and the 3 of them show up here in area B. Again, allows me for quick and convenient access. So that's it for VCAs and pop groups. I hope you found this information helpful. In the next video, we'll look at effects processors and graphic EQs.